It is April 27th, and we are here for the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District School Board meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending on this warm Vermont evening. I'm going to do a quick run through the agenda and then have Pat call roll. So we're going to start with community comments, followed by a principal's report from Kevin Hamilton here at Browns River. We'll dive into the device-free schools policy. It's a voting night. Our policy governance module, school improvement planning update, a superintendent update, have our consent agenda, and then other business. Are there any additions or anything to the agenda? Changes, updates? Anyone, anything? Great, thank you. I'm already sweating. Pat, take us through roll.
All right, thank you. Tara Arneson.
Present.
Kevin Campbell.
I'm present.
Heather Chadwick.
Present.
Allison Conant.
Present.
Stephen Diglio.
Here.
Edie Groening.
Here.
James Granzo. No. Susan Lillich.
Here.
Sandra Limoges.
Here.
Cal Magida.
Here.
Ethan Maurer.
Here.
Stuart Morigeau.
Not on the board.
Katie Nelson.
Here.
Lisa Pollock. Helen Stoddard.
Here.
And student representatives Eli Wimette
Here.
and Jack Connell.
Here.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Pat. So for community comments, we have our sign-in sheet for folks in the room. And then for folks online, I would just love it if you raised your hand and we'll call you in order, but we're going to start with the folks in the room. Our community comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per person. The board requests that participants clearly state their name, place of residence, and topic of comment. School board will take no action on items raised during community comments, and dialogue exchanges will be for clarification. Unless immediate attention is required, action by the school board will occur at a subsequent meeting. So we're going to start in the room, and Eric Kroll, you're first on the list.
Where should I go? Right here?
Well, I understand you're a teacher, so if you'd like to be in the first room.
That's my day job. Is this okay right here?
Yeah, you're
So
totally.
my name is Eric Kroll. I'm a Huntington resident. I teach at Mount Mansfield, where I have for many, many years. I have 3 girls, 2 still currently in the system. I also serve as president of GMNEA. And the topic, I think, I want to, I guess, clarify some things based on the ongoing discussion you folks are having regarding the implementation of the cell phone policy for next year. Specifically, I'm here to respond to, I guess, correct claims that came from a community organization advocating for, or I guess I should say against, what I understand to be the current draft of the policy. And I'm here to kind of speak to that for the benefit of the board, but perhaps for the benefit of those folks as well. The claims made, as I understand them, are that senior leaders of Green Mountain NEA were in support of a recent petition regarding the cell phone policy, and that the union, Green Mountain NEA, took an official position stating opposition to the proposed policy. I want to state unequivocally that that is not the case. Green Mountain NEA has not and will not take any official position on this issue. There are certainly, some of our 350 plus members who may have signed a petition or have represented their own beliefs and feelings on this issue, and they're more than welcome to do that. However, they do not represent any position of our local association, nor I would even say a majority of teachers. I don't know where these claims originated, but I'm disappointed that I'd like to think in this room that we have a pretty good reputation and that our voices has been, valued for what it is, representing the educators of boy, I almost said Chittenden, but MMU. I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed that our voice was kind of co-opted for a specific agenda, for lack of a better word. I'll also state simply, as both president and representative of Vermont NEA, this is a real serious issue, and our kids and society in general is troubled, and many of our issues, I think, that we see are deeply amplified by the use of technology in general. But our job is to work with administrators in the coming years and to support our staff and members to implement whatever policy is put in place by those administrators. So I welcome any clarifying questions, and I thank you for your time. And you'll forgive me if I don't stay for these riveting proceedings, but my youngest is playing a lacrosse game over at MMU, so I'll have to scoot over to that. So
Great. Thank you, Eric.
yes.
Melissa?
Hi, I am Melissa Haykamp. I'm an Jericho resident, and I'm also here for the phone policy. As a member of Reconnect, I also had not heard that, so I would definitely look into that. We did put out a petition, and in 2 days we had 122 people respond and support that we do not support this current policy. 22 of them were MMU teachers coming from inside, but they do not represent your organization. So I also was a former architect, and as an architect, we knew a lot of things, but we still had to rely on experts. So I would just say that the experts on phone policy have spoken, and the current policy as written is a D, possibly an F grade, because phones are accessible to students if they're in lockers, which I think is the current policy right now. I would say that as an architect, if I got a low grade, I would have to redesign the bill. And I would say that Reconnect is actually not about taking things away. We really want people to connect in real life. So I wonder if there was a more human way of turning in our phones at the beginning of the day, like maybe to our advisory committee who only has 12 students per advisor, so that the students come in, they have a real face knowing that somebody actually cares about this policy. They turn it in, at the end of the day, they come and they speak to a human being. And that's the ultimate goal of Reconnect, is that we're connecting in real life and giving those opportunities for kids. So I would just say that we ask that the advisory, or that you guys say no to the current policy as is, because students still have access. And as an architect, when you build something wrong and you have to fix it after the fact, it's almost impossible. It's a lot of money, resource, time. So I would love to see this policy built from the foundation up on solid ground. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Different room. Does that tell you ones and twos, or we just have
You
one?
just
hand
have
up?
the one. It's Patty
Read that name to me.
Delaney.
Thank you. Patty Delaney, if you'd like to come off mute.
Thanks very much. It looks like my camera isn't working. I apologize. My name is Patty Delaney. I'm a resident of Huntington, and I'm also going to speak about the phone policy. I have a kiddo who's a sophomore at MMU, and when Henry was 8 years old, we went for a well child visit to see Dr. Paul Parker in Richmond, and Henry had one question on his mind at that appointment. He was desperate, just desperate to be relieved of the responsibility of using a booster seat in the car. And so he asked Dr. Parker what were the criteria that would be used to enable him to no longer have to use the booster seat. And Dr. Parker, being the kind and empathetic and very thorough person that he is, said, well, you know, Henry, there are actually two standards. There's what I'll call the bare minimum basic standard, and then there's the gold standard. So I'll tell you about both of them. The bare minimum basic standard was, if you're 8 years old, you no longer have to use a booster seat in the car. And the gold standard policy recommendation, based on data and science and community consensus, endorsed by the American Pediatric Association and the American Medical Association and a variety of other experts who examined safety and its impact on children. That standard, according to Dr. Parker, was that young people had to meet height and weight guidelines before they could be freed from having to use a booster seat. And by the first standard, Henry was 8 years old, and thus the bare minimum standard would have enabled him to no longer use his booster seat. But by the safer standard, the more responsible standard, the gold standard, he was an inch short and 10 pounds too light. And if any of you know Henry, you'll know that in the moment that he heard Dr. Parker say what the second standard was, he knew what was going to happen in our household. So he kind of looked chagrined and he looked at me and I said, Hen, which standard do you think we're going to follow in our household? And he said, the safer one. And I said, yep, that's what we're going to do. Because we want to keep you safe and we want to do what's best for you and we want to protect you and we want to follow the science and the data. And was it a little bit of a hassle to keep using the booster seat a little bit longer? Yep. Did we have to haul it on airplanes and did we get some pushback? Yep. But it was absolutely the right thing to do to keep him safe. And we did it because we cared about him and because we loved him and because it wasn't so difficult to do the harder thing and have the more stringent standard. So I urge the board to do that tonight, to use your oversight and your guidance and your policy governance model to tell the board, to tell the superintendent and the district that we need to follow an end that is stricter and more protective and that keeps our kids safe because they deserve that. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Are there any other community comments? Being none, I'd like to move on to Kevin's principal report.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Kevin Hamilton. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm principal at Browns River Middle School. This is my 17th year here. Hard to believe, but it's gone quickly, and I've enjoyed, I would say, almost every minute of it. It's a great community, and I really enjoy being here, and a great community of parents, of families, and kids that are just amazing. And it's always great to see alumni come back, Eli, and so it's great to see what they're doing and catching up with them, and just really a positive thing. So Browns River Middle School, as you saw in my report, we've been focusing a lot this year on SEL skills and our executive functioning skills. There's been a lot of work that we've done as a community. We sent a team to the Middle Grades Institute last June. I shared the executive functioning lessons that we kind of developed from that. We want to kind of look at that across the board for our kids in terms of their skill sets and developing those. We feel that's a really great benefit for our kids across settings. These transferable skills will go a long way for our kids, and we want to really embed that into what we're doing, from time management to organizational skills to all sorts of things around those, just being a student. We see that as that's a great goal for our kids across settings, they're at different developmental levels, and we did a lot of work on that as a school, but we also did some work on that with our with Camel's Hump Middle School as well. We collaborated with them this year for 4 days of our early release time, 2 days over at Camel's Hump and 2 days here. Had some real, again, I shared kind of the plan that we had there. So teachers were talking about that in mixed groups. So it wasn't just math teachers with math teachers. It was a math teacher with an ELA teacher with an AXP teacher in small groups, kind of talking about those skills that are transferable for kids across settings. So that's a lot of the work that we've been doing here on top of the curriculum work that we always do with our coaches in math, ELA, science, and social studies. But we felt that was a really big goal of ours. We want to continue that going into the next school year, possibly sending another team to the Middle Grades Institute and just kind of building that and really embedding it into our systems this year going forward. Yeah, I think the last board meeting you had talked about, I think someone had mentioned, what are the warts? I think it was kind of what things we were working on. And this is one of those skills that we really feel that our students need to work on, and especially those kids that are not meeting the academic standards. We can really see that those have the impact on them as students, and that's really where we want to reach them with those executive functioning skills, and also making sure that they're connected with us as adults. Our numbers in one of our surveys, it was a little lower than I thought. Some people thought it was a good number, but it seems like some of our kids are not always connected with an adult, one adult, and we want to make sure that we're looking at that and how we have students connected with adults in the building, because I feel that is a benefit to our kids to be able to really perform here at Browns River Middle School. A part of that, I'm going to kind of skip down, a part of the connecting with adults is our NEST, our school-wide advisory program that we meet once a week in small groups with one teacher. It's mixed grade level, so there's 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders in those groups. And it's been, I think, really positively received. There's a lot of connections that we've seen kids make across grade levels that I didn't quite realize before weren't there before we didn't have the NEST, that people, kids didn't know the 8th graders, some of them did, but there was this really disconnect. And now you can see 8th graders talking to some 5th graders and kind of being, and 5th graders encouraging 8th graders and just making some really natural connections, and making a connection with an adult that they usually don't connect with. So maybe they may have as their advisor, a 7th grade teacher that there's not their teacher right now. And so they're making connections with adults that are not in their normal day. For that advisory, there is a schedule of sessions that we have. It's all mapped out for the year. That's what we use our last day of in-service for. Our teachers design the year, so they each take a different group. We focus on Black history one month. We focused on food insecurity. We focused on the Special Olympics and stuff like that. So we tie that all in with some educational stuff about kind of all the things that we're doing in school. So there's common conversations that are happening with our kids around important topics. This year, we in the years past, it was like a little serious heavy. So we built in one day a month to just have fun. And that's kind of what we realized, that we were just kind of hitting kids with a lot of heavy topics. And we wanted to say, okay, let's back off a little bit and have fun. The fun thing we do at the end of the year is that we have our Grand Prix. It's going into its 4th year. Did you do it, Eli? No? All right, you missed it. All right.
I went into my 4th year also.
That's what I did. This is the 4th year where they build what they call a hood ornament. We put it on the card out there. If you've seen some of the pictures, hood ornaments have become more and more elaborate over the years, and the themes have become more and more elaborate, and they get really competitive, and they push around these carts in the parking lot. There's 400 kids out there hooting and hollering, and there's a few injuries, a few scrapes and bumps and stuff like that. Usually it's a staff member, but we have a great time out there. So those are kind of those connections that we're making with kids. We do continue to have our traditions. I continue to brag about it. I continue to point out that, we do our food drive in the fall. We have our penguin plunge in the winter, and then we do relatively, now I'd say relatively new. I think it's been our 10th year now that we support Spectrum Youth Services. And over the last 2 years, this year we raised over $40,000 between the two, which it continues to be incredible. That our kids, yeah, what's that for the Spectrum?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe 12 now. Yeah. But they've had some amazing experiences. They'll be sleeping out. Last year, they woke up with 5 inches of snow on top of their tents. And we're able to kind of talk about what that means. They knew they were coming into a nice warm building for breakfast. Think about having to do that every day. And this year it was kind of a similar experience. The night got a little difficult as it went through. So some really good conversations. There was about 70 kids sleeping out there. And some of them ended up in the gym, on the gym floor, but they had to experience that and for a night in solidarity with Spectrum, and did an amazing job with that. And again, some great conversations around that. Penguin plunge, we had about 70 kids go into the water. Again, there's a lot of discussion though tied into that as well. So it's not just, we're doing this for fun. There's a reason, and there's a discussion around it, and the implications on it. A lot of pieces to that. Student voice. We've got our stack, which is student, they just renamed it. So a student, I'm going to come up with it here, but we have a new leadership committee that they just named, and they are, they created some suggestion box that put in each grade level. So they're getting suggestions from students now. And so we have a committee that's a group of students that are taking a leadership role. They went to the Vermont middle level leadership academy at Champlain College this year as well. So they are well on their way to kind of take on some leadership roles and make some changes in our building, getting input from kids around what we need to change, what we need to do better as a school. Continue to have a lot of participation in our activities. Well over 95% of our kids are doing at least one activity in our survey that we have. And we've looked at the survey and we see the 5% and we're like, wow, I know that kid did this. So there's some kids in there that didn't identify that they did a club. So there's a lot of activities that are going on after schools that really are healthy for our kids, from our drama program to our music program. A volleyball program. We've got sports. We've got writing clubs, NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writers Month. We have a Pride Club that meets weekly, art, Legos, Dungeons and Dragons, just a wide variety. And if a child wants to start something, and actually the leadership group kind of came from some kids, they took the initiative to kind of push that forward with me. So we are, really active. Our fields are, as you know, are super active, and John's going to laugh. I always put in a plug. We can always use a bigger gym. So it's just,
That a lot.
yeah, it's just used all the time. And it's just a great facility for the community. Unfortunately, I have to turn people away because it's just booked all the time. Then it needs maintenance too and stuff. So it's just a very well used facility that's well taken care of, but it needs a lot of TLC at the same time. So some really, some great stuff that's going on there. We're going to continue future aspirations. We were just meeting today, talking about how we want to utilize our early release time next year with Camel's Hump. We were meeting with our coaches. Gretchen, I see you on there. We're going to contact you to talk about just what we want to move forward with, in terms of how we want to go forward with our early release time and utilizing that. We have an extra day next year. I think we have an extra month. So we're excited about that. It's time that's well utilized. So I just want to reiterate that. I know that's sometimes a challenge for families for early release time, but it's definitely a time that's well utilized for us as staff members to find that common time to be able to get together. It never seems like there's enough time to be able to do it. So those are the kind of the future aspirations. I did put our SIP goals in there, continuous improvement. We have a math goal and also the SEL goal. So you can kind of look at that. And that's kind of my report. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I have two questions. Is that okay?
Of course.
I'm going to start with the continuous improvement plan.
Mm-hmm.
Have a goal to increase the proficiency of fifth grade class.
Right.
Is it based on how they tested? Because fifth grade is the first year here.
It
That
seems to be
feels-
when the number comes in, it's a little lower. I think sometimes when we come in, I don't know if there's a dip because of the transition. So we're kind of looking at that. And so there always seems to be a little bit of a dip and then come back up. So that's kind of what we're looking at and trying to really get those core skills for them and really focus on that for our kids.
So it's not based on the fifth grade class from last year.
No, it's yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then my other question is around vaping, which you haven't talked about at all, but I am hearing that statewide, the age that kids are starting is around 9, which is well before middle school. And I'm curious if you're seeing it here, if it's an issue here, if you're confiscating
I am not.
This is a me question.
Yeah.
But
I-
also,
A few years ago, again, this is anecdotally, right, from my experiences. A few years ago, I think there was a bigger issue from what secrets aren't always kept really well here at Browns River Middle School amongst the kids, and they're usually pretty good at saying someone's doing something. And usually and I know things change and the odors, trying to kick that. I have not had to be dealing with that this year. I'm sure there are kids that are doing it. But usually if there's a lot of it, there's more evidence of it. It's kind of how I see it. I think a few years back during the COVID time, I think there was more, from what I see.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I know I didn't ask you that in advance, so.
No, that's fine. I don't, it seems to have dropped here. And again, this is anecdote. I have not confiscated any at this point in time.
Thank you.
And I will say, we have a pretty healthy community. A lot of kids out doing a lot of really healthy activities, even beyond what we offer. They're just going all the time. There's a lot of healthy activities going on. With the dance studios, with skiing, there's just the dance is just incredible. The amount of dance. With that location right over here and other dance programs, we have a lot of kids that walk over there after school. So, very active.
It's maybe a year or two too early, but is there a role the board can play to give the student leadership team or whatever it got rebranded as a voice, or become when we're here, they talk to us or something like that? Is that
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We just established a new leader. It definitely would be something that I'm sure they would like to present some things to the board. They're a pretty active group. They're pretty vocal and not shy.
Great idea.
Yeah, it would be great, I think. Yeah.
Other questions for Kevin?
I have a comment. Kevin, I just wanted to thank you for including this continuous improvement plan, and the way that it is set up is really clear and definitely adds another level of understanding to some of the more gritty things that you're dealing with on a daily basis with your team. So thanks for including that. It's something I'd love to see.
I also want to say I love the focus on the executive functioning skills, and I think that would also work towards both of the continuous improvement plan goals highlighted there. It really seems like a great investment.
Well, I think that for me over the years, it's the kid that has their head down and are not connected in class that we need to reach, right? And I think a lot of times that we need to remind ourselves too that for us at Browns River Middle School, it's a 4-year arc, right, that we have to reach a child. And that's kind of the conversations that we have. It's not like we're going to instantly change things, but we can see the arc over time. And we've seen that arc over time where there was a child maybe in 5th grade, and we kind of talk about that and remind ourselves of the successes of children who were pretty downtrodden in 5th grade, or were not connected. And then you saw them in 5th grade and 7th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as they grew. So that's really, for me, where it's at. It was about that connection and getting kids to want to be here and to perform. So.
Great, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
You're welcome to stay, welcome to go.
You have to ride my bike home, so I might go.
Thanks,
Stay
Kevin.
for like another hour.
It's downhill.
Fast, throw me all night.
Yeah, it is. We'll reset it tomorrow.
Device-free school policy. Who's ready? I'm ready. Can I get a motion to approve the device-free phone policy? Device-free school policy.
Moved.
There, second. Thanks, Kyle. Floor is open for discussion.
I will say Everybody's being so quiet. I'm not thrilled with the policy. I think it's adequate. I don't think it's great policy. I understand the process. I have a lot of concerns about enforcement, and that is outside of the board's purview. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's not the kind of thing that creates more issues than it but yeah, I don't love it.
Gives you concern.
That there's an awful lot of wiggle room. There's nobody checking to make sure that the phones are turned in. There's no, it's all about the culture at the school, and the culture at the school it's going to take more work, I think, to make this a phone-free school culture than put your phone in your locker. I think it's going to be very likely that more students will have them in their backpacks than will have them in their lockers. And that's going to be harder to police and harder to enforce, I guess is the right word. And yeah, I have concerns.
I agree with you, Edie, and I think the word that I keep getting stuck on is prohibit the access, and I don't think that this necessarily prohibits the access. And I don't know if I'm not sure if that's a means kind of thing or if it's a policy thing, but I don't think that the way that it's written right now, I don't think it prohibits access to the phone.
I think if I can, that's a conversation after the last meeting I had a lot with the district's attorney. Because their concerns were raised by some constituents on the outside that the policy as it's written doesn't meet the legal standards set by the state. And they gave me an interesting framing for it that helped me understand it in a way that was much more succinct than what I was doing beforehand, which was just to substitute the term cell phone or personal device for alcohol. Right.
Exactly what I did as I was like running this in my head.
And they also made a really good point, which I don't think I made as succinctly as I could have in the meeting that we had where we discussed this first. So they're the attorney for the majority of school districts in the state, right? And so they've been helping everybody kind of navigate through this. And really absent becoming like very, very restrictive or aggressive, even the most restrictive policies in the states they're still seeing low turn-in rates, right? And so there is no way absent, like patting down kids or making them use clear backpacks to ensure that students don't have a device that's coming in. So, their superintendents have talked about struggles they've had with like dummy phones, like an old phone goes in the caddy, or people saying, I don't bring my phone to school anymore, or I leave it in my car, or, and then having a phone. And so the advice they said was like, you would never check every kid as they came in to the school for alcohol, right? But yet you prohibit the use and access to alcohol while kids are on campus. And so that was a kind of nice reframe for me in thinking about it. That said, I think I know I'm speaking for Kevin and Gretchen and Mike, but all of the administrators as well. We will figure out a way to make any policy work. We brought this policy to you because we feel like this is the best approach for our schools. It's not perfect. And despite what we have heard very many times from some people, that research is really not clear on what the best approach for phone storage is. And so we really are leaning on what we heard from our students at the beginning of the process about wanting to be treated like partners in the process and developing it, and not to have something like I think they use the word like police state related to phones. And so this is our attempt to kind of thread that needle. On all those fronts.
But I think there comes a time too, as we are, as parents raising young adults, in our schools, we're teaching them to be responsible young adults. We have to have some trust in them, right? If our ends policy is creating globally engaged citizens and we're saying, we don't trust you, what is that doing? We're not giving them any agency and we're making them feel like we as a district don't trust them. And I think we have to err on the side of, once we have a policy published, that students will do the right thing. I mean, we are essentially removing devices pre-K to 8, and that's also going to create a culture of when I move into high school, the expectation is I don't have my phone in class. It's going to take a while, but it's going to be there. But I think we need to do our due diligence and trust the high school students that they'll do the right thing and possibly start using their locker. But I agree with John. I don't think there's a way we can truly police each and every student and frisk them and take their phone away from them when they walk into the school phone device, right? Because this includes the fancy watches and everything too. And I think we have a decent policy. I've also talked to other parents in other school districts whose high schools have just given up, right? They started with the packets. They started with teachers taking the phone at the front door to not even trying, and the students are walking in the door saying, I didn't bring it today. But of course, it's in their bag or it's in their car, but it's somewhere, right? Like, we're not going to eliminate phones from the school, devices from the schools. We just need to have that academic time where students are not on them, or having teachers say, go ahead, it's a study hall, get on your phone and look up whatever, right? I think it is going to be a bit of a culture shift. And as a board, I think we need to be able to support families in our communities around it. Go ahead, Eli.
I've talked with a lot of students from other districts on boards, and a lot of them have had backpack policies. And while those are not the same necessarily as the locker, to me, it's kind of in the similar category of more self-enforced, self-regulated. And the narrative for everyone that I've talked to has been very, very similar. The first month has been very difficult on students and teachers alike. And then after that, sort of phones have become sort of obsolete in schools and people haven't really been seeing them. So I think it's also almost as much as creating a policy and a storage option. It's just as important that we're spending the time creating the culture shift. Like, that's just as important in enforcing this policy. So I think that the locker storage solution we currently have is going to be very helpful, both in the fact that it was partially student created, which will, I think, help sort of sell it to students versus a more strict policy. And I also think that it will be effective. I really do think that it will be effective after the first month or two of school. I think it'll be effective.
Heather.
I agree with Tara, what you say. I think that a lot of it comes to, it's like, this can't all be on the schools to solve. Like, parents are buying these kids these expensive computers to have in their hands and then sending them to school being like, wait, why can't the school stop you from using them? Like, there has to be some personal responsibility on the parents giving the kids these phones and teaching them, like, if the rule is you don't use your phone during school, that's the rule. You shouldn't be breaking the rule. And like, there are consequences at home. Like, it can't be all on the schools to solve these problems that are come to their door. Like, there needs to be more help outside the schools. We have parents and like parent groups maybe working with parents to, it's like, we wonder why it's so expensive to educate kids in the state. But yeah, we keep coming up with these problems that then the schools, everybody places on the fix. Like, it can't just be a school fixing a problem. It needs to be an entire community fixing the problem, where it starts at home. Like, if you don't want your kid using their phone at school, maybe don't give your kid a phone. Like, and then teach them, if they have the phone, that this is the rule, just like every other rule at school. You gotta be at school on time. You can't do this at school. You can't do that at school. They have to follow it. And, you know, and then like the kids, there are gonna be the kids that break the rules, but then there are gonna be the majority of the kids that follow the rules. And I'd like to have a faith in our students that there'll be a majority of them that follow them. And it's not our job to create, like, be patting kids down and constantly policing them. There are going to be kids that break the rules, but I think that majority of them will follow them. And then, you know, there needs to be accountability at home too, and that just can't be us. So I think I'm gonna vote yes for the policy.
I agree with what everyone's been saying about this is a plus or minus of the I think we all are aligned on the culture. That is what we're trying to do here. And I think the enforcement and actually the implementation of that culture is going to be the actual work here. And we can't do, like, A, we're a policy governance board, we shouldn't be doing that here. And B, we're 15 people, 2 students, one of whom's not here next year. We're not going to be able to change the culture. Sorry, it's all on you, John. So I think that's on John and Kevin and Gretchen and Mike to figure out what that looks like. I do have a question around if we explicitly call out the locker in here, and I think what we kind of have, it feels like what we've aligned on is we want it off person. Should we not even have a method of off person to give flexibility if it turns out the lockers don't work for whatever reason? Do we want to make this less restrictive in the sense of we would have to change this policy to remove lockers if it turns out, John, the lockers are not the effective solution? Is there value in giving you more implementation latitude and making clear that we want off person, but how is less important?
I think so it's a great question. And I think that the flexibility is always a good thing to have. I think that realistically, you know, like Eli was mentioning, you heard from other students, it takes a month or two to kind of get our bearings and figure out how things are going. I have a pretty high degree of confidence that we're not going to have issues with the lockers. But if the board wanted to extend that that would be the plan we would run with, whether we had the flexibility or not. And then if the language is in and specifies lockers, and we needed to change, we would not be shy about coming back to ask for that. I would really leave that to the board. I think this is likely a policy that we're going to revisit or bring back up to see how we're doing as time goes on, whether it's just communication and a status update. Given the importance and the community investment in it. But I think also there's likely to be pieces of it that will have to change in a year or two's time.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like, it's not permanent. Personally, I approach most policies that way, at least the ones that I work with daily, where it's not permanent, right? Like, when I stepped into this chair role, I told you I was going to make mistakes, right? And sometimes, like, you misstep in some language and then you fix it, and then you fix it again and fix it again, and quite possibly iterate for 5 years. Like, personally, I'm okay with the same locker to start and to see where it goes. What, Susan?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've been giving this a great deal of thought. I have a lot of complicated feelings about all of it. I think a lot of my uncertainty is really around our process with the policy and crafting the policy. Some of it is just me still, after all these years, trying to really wrap my head around, you know, means versus ends, and how to be a responsible, you know, how to be, you know, true to being a member of a policy governance board. We certainly have, I think, John and others have done due diligence on surveying. We've gotten a lot of community input. I'm a little, what's the right word? I wish that the survey had
that went out particularly to the MMU teachers had distinguished between lockers and, you just had an off-person option. And it is different to have a locker policy versus hand it into your advisory teacher, or there's a caddy or whatever. Especially in light of this recent, this whatever you want to call it, document. I was going to say petition, but that was signed by over 20 MMU teachers, which is a pretty significant percentage of the teachers in the building. So I just want to make sure that we're not doing something that is going counter to what teachers are saying they're comfortable with. Because that seems like a setup for potentially not creating the culture shift that we're all hoping for. We really want, agree with what our Edie and Bennett and a bunch of other people echoed, regarding this is not just about where your phone is during the day. It's a much bigger issue that's going to require, everyone to work together to accomplish what I guess, we hope this policy will accomplish. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily suggesting that the policy needs to be changed, but I think we have gotten a lot of input as a board, probably more on this issue than on, and over a longer period of time than on any other issue that I can remember in recent history. And yeah, so I'm uneasy. I'll just say I'm uneasy.
You mentioned the petition, and I wonder if that's just worth having a conversation about briefly. Because I was really intrigued by the data that represented, and it gave me pause as well when I first saw it. But then I compared it to the survey that we had originally done, and I realized actually it's not new data for us. It is representing that one part of the continuum of our survey results that felt really strongly about storage location being off student and not in a locker. But it doesn't capture the other respondents that we got to the survey, which some of them felt equally strongly that these devices are learning tools, right? And we shouldn't be locking them up. And then there was that huge number of people in the middle that said, just tell us what to do and we'll make it happen. And so I think that, I was not originally, I saw the same thing, 22 MMU staff members, that gave me pause. But then I went and I looked at the survey and I realized actually we already knew that. And I would say like that is part of this balance that we have to achieve in implementing this, because no matter what we decide, there is a large enough people who feel really strongly, totally opposite to what is decided. And we will have to work very deliberately with them to bring them on board with this, because we all of the staff in the school need to be rowing in the same direction for this to work. The other interesting thing about the petition is less than a quarter of the parents that responded to it are high school parents. I double checked the names against the student registry. And so it is just an interesting piece of data. I'm not judging, I'm just intrigued by it, that so many people that don't have a child at the high school yet, I think almost 80% of them were elementary parents, were responding to a petition about a very specific policy at the policy language about the high school. I was really intrigued by that.
Yeah, I've got option, as you know, we've talked about it. That's been in my calculus as well, because I think, it's a very different developmental stage, obviously. And I wish that we had heard more about you've alluded to a few times that there's sort of an equally vocal or strongly feeling contingent of folks who are like, no, don't restrict the access. Let them have, but we haven't, I don't think I've heard that much about what those folks are saying. I saw a little bit of it in the survey data, but, so that makes it harder for me to consider that, those voices, because I personally haven't had anyone approach me with that.
Right.
That position. I believe you when you say you're hearing that, but
Well, and I'll be honest, I've heard less from that group than we have from, it's hard. I'm not sure. I have been kind of referring to the Reconnect group as like a monolith, but I understand we've heard from, people that are aligned in their interests, but maybe not a part of the group, but that kind of community group. And that is, we've heard the most from that. That's where the highest like level of volume has been. I think the survey provided a window into perspectives that are different from that. But some of these conversations I've had to have in hallways and in classrooms, talking with teachers and really asking, what they think, or talking, like the technology integration staff, for one, is one that has really strong feelings that run counter necessarily. I don't want to paint them as a monolith either, but that's where I've heard some really interesting commentary about the power of these tools, for learning. So, yeah.
Ethan.
I think, Susan, if the policy had said no cell phones whatsoever, pre-K through 12, would we have a group speaking out like we are now? I think it would be an interesting multiverse experience. But I have a couple thoughts here. I think that the policy is actually pretty inconsistent. I still really struggle that it's a student personal electronic policy. I think that this will fail miserably. Correct me if I'm wrong. If teachers are sitting there on their cell phones during passing time or in between period, what's the same thing, at their lunch break, whatever. So I just think it needs to be modeled as a district policy and not a student policy. A couple just random thoughts. Sorry, I got a list here. The idea of we don't pat kids down, but in a lot of places, kids actually go through metal detectors for weapons. Not that I'm going to say a cell phone is equal to a weapon. However, I think there is a lot of data out there that says cell phone is very damaging to kids. I think staff, no matter what, are going to have a struggle, whether it's the first month or first 2 months or first 6 months. I'm of the belief that sometimes it's harder to establish a high bar and work backwards. It's really hard to establish a low bar and then raise it after the fact. I think that was my experience as a teacher. I always wanted to be really strict at the beginning, and then I could ease it back when the thing's laid out. But to try to make it stricter as it goes, pretty challenging. I think the parent responsibility piece is huge and spot on. I think my feeling right now is that it's the school time and school can do what it wants. Parents should be working on those skills maybe after hours. What does it look like? Hey, maybe don't sit at the dinner table with your phone out, or the first thing that you do when you get out of the shower is you start texting your friends and checking what their outfits are for the day. Not that happens in my house. I think this idea of trusting the student is also really important. We want to I'm looking at the ends policy. Does this policy fit within our global ends? I think we do trust the students. I think we do give them a lot of opportunity. I think there are some things that, again, we make decisions and we have to do that as adults, whether we're parents or guardians, to make decisions for children that sometimes are not necessarily popular. And we do it for the right reasons. Now, with Patty's example, I would have told Henry, go, eat some McDonald's or something else and get the 1 pound, 1 inch, stretch yourself out, get out of that car seat. I think one of the things that I'm really struggling with, though, is the disconnect with the two groups. And I think we're missing an opportunity where we're going to have grades pre-K through 8 with a no cell phone policy. They're right. That group, we should be preparing for those kids coming up through the system. This is not a decision that we're basing on Eli's grade who's leaving, or even Jack's grade that's going to be a senior, gosh, give them senior privileges and let them have their phone. But you could do a different kind of policy. But I think you're having all these kids come in, and yeah, maybe they might say, oh, this is the school culture and I'm just going to keep it away. The reality is that they're going to be well versed in keeping it away. Why would we open? Like, I know when I gave my kid the phone, it was like Pandora's box. And so why not just take the pain now, work through it, have staff, have administration, have students, have parents and guardians all struggle with it, and get over that hump. And it might take a little bit longer, but I think we have talked about MMU as a district, as a model district, one that leads the way, not one that follows. And so while maybe it hasn't necessarily been, you know, like widely studied, or turn-in rates might be terrible. I mean, there's all sorts of things, but we shouldn't, as the best district in the state, be worrying about what's happened necessarily, and failures or lack of success with other districts. We can do better. And you know, the last, just sort of again, where I think the policy is really poorly worded, is one where abdicating responsibility around saying you put it in your locker and it's your responsibility. Well, we own those lockers. Things can happen, and I worry that we are saying, oh, you're responsible, but someone, you know, locker gets broken into and their $1,000 iPhone is stolen, and then we're just saying, oh, sorry, that's your responsibility. I don't know how well that's, I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to be, but it just seems like that might be questionable. And then just this line, and students grade 9 through 12 are strongly encouraged not to bring personal electronic devices to school. Well, I was going to say my daughter's going to be driving next year. She's going to be bringing her phone to school because I want her to have a phone in the car while she's driving. I don't want her to have a phone in school. That's fine. But in the 30-minute drive, especially in bad weather conditions, not that she might have service, but she would at least have a device to contact. So that just seems, again, like there's a miss there with saying you're encouraged not to bring it. But the same thing goes if my kid's on the bus. If she wants 30 minutes of listening to music while she's riding on the bus, fine. Do I want her scrolling on Snapchat or Instagram? No, but I'm also going to trust my student to be able to do that. So I really struggle with the district policy. You know, again, what if a student said, oh, I just have a flip phone, right? That's going to be a very different experience, and we'd be having a very different conversation if that's all that kids had. So I said it before, say it again, I'm not voting for this policy. I would love to revisit it. I think the other piece that it's okay to say we're going to revisit it. I need some assurances from leadership that it will be on the agenda and that there would be certain points to be able to accept that piece. I'm still not voting for the policy though, because it just, as I said, doesn't work for me.
Can I ask you a question? What would you want to see different to be comfortable with it?
Well, I think it's a bell to bell ban, and they should either check it in. And this is where I want to be careful, Susan, because I'd be like, oh, well, you would do this, or this, and I don't want to prescribe procedure or means. But I think it's a check-in. I think it's a turn it in, and we deal with it as best that we can there.
I've leaned toward that myself, but I do think it's really interesting what John was saying, that he's been hearing from, you know, other schools that have that check-in system, which is kids are not checking in their devices. And so that could be a case of really good intentions gone awry. I am curious about Eli and Jack, what you think on, well, you were going to say something anyway. Go ahead.
I really want to just quickly talk about like the sort of teacher phone usage and staff phone usage aspect of things. I can only speak so much to their perspective, but I was in on a staff meeting when this policy was proposed, and there kind of seemed to be a group understanding that this policy also applied to them. And the first and I think only question that was asked was like, what's the deal with phone usage during like emergency drills? Like, how can we make sure we have our phones on us then? I can say, like, even now when we have no policies in place, I have not seen a teacher on their phone ever. So I'm personally not worried about the whole teacher being on their phone, messing with the effectiveness of the policy and sort of screwing with the students' ability to take the policy seriously. That's not something I would worry about personally.
Just for the record, students on phones in emergencies and staff on phones in emergencies actually makes them less safe. And there have been many studies on that. And I just feel like bringing that up, I have to make that really clear. It actually makes it, you follow directions less, you're louder to anybody who is intruding in the building. So just.
You might be changing up the scene of the.
Right.
Questions were mostly on the evacuation communication system that is currently in place.
And I'm sorry, Allison, but just to respond to Susan, I think no matter what, there are going to be issues. And so what's the poison that we're going to accept, right? Are we going to sort of accept? Because if you have a locker policy or a backpack policy, it still could be someone's just, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Weston, check my locker. My phone's in there and it's a burner phone and they got another phone. So no matter what, there's going to be a compliance aspect to it. And so whether it's turn it in and you worry about turn-in rates, or put it in your locker and you worry about lock rates, or you're just saying like, nah, everyone's supposed to have their locker. We're not going to check. Allison.
Hang on, Jack. Let's go to Allison.
Hi. Good conversation. I think one of my mantras that I really like, and I say to myself a lot, is that perfect is the enemy of good. And I trust that the folks in place have put together very solidly good policy here. We will not know so many things until we start living with this. And I trust John when he says that we will revisit this and have more conversations. I do feel just really uncomfortable with the level of sort of like surveillance and scrutiny that's being discussed here with our students. And, there's a lot of things I can imagine other conversations where we're talking about limiting things from students and what they have access to that we would feel very differently. Anyway, but I'm going to vote for yes for this. I think let's try it. Let's see. I think a lot of smart people have weighed in here, and we're not going to get everything right in our first year. We're going to learn a lot, but there's just so many potential outcomes here, and we can keep talking about it, but we really just won't know. And my feeling is that the team has put together a really, really solidly good policy here, and I'm willing to put my confidence behind it and see how it goes.
Go ahead, Jack.
I want to say that I just don't know like what other options there are available to us to like actually not have the kids feel like they're being policed. Like just having a central place when they come into the school, like a bucket or something that feels like policing, and like those pouches feel like policing. And I feel like the lockers are like, it's a fine line, like policing and like the students feeling like they have freedom. But the lockers to me feel like it's on that line, and it's like just enough where it's not policing, and it's just enough where the students feel comfortable. And another thing is this policy will like severely limit kids' access to phones, like no matter what. And I think as there will always be kids that will break the rules, and there's just no way to get around that. And this policy will help get rid of those, will help minimize that. And it just, yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Jack. Kevin Campbell. Yes.
Feather. Just to, I think, build on what Allison said, I'm looking at this as following, and I think the board should as well. A law was passed, and the district needs to adopt a policy that meets the law's intent. And when that happens, historically, the administration brings that policy. It's an administrative policy, not a board policy. They bring that to the board, and what we're asked to do, I think, is does this meet the intent of the law or not? We don't get involved in how we're going to implement that policy. And we've had a lot of people share their opinion. I have my own personal opinion on it. I don't know if that's appropriate for the board to do. I think what we're being asked is if this policy brought by the administration meets the intent of the law, we approve it. If it doesn't, we say why, and then you go back and redo it. I haven't heard anybody say why it doesn't meet the intent of the law. If it's not written well, if we don't, like what's in there, I think that's a conversation that you have offline with the administration maybe and work on it. But I don't think as a board, that's our responsibility here. If we were if we were going to write a policy ourselves as a board policy and, as an executive limitation and say thou shall not, allow cell phones to be in the hands of that's a whole nother story, but we're not taking that up. We're reviewing an administrative policy, I think, to make sure that it aligns with the law. Our superintendent has says it does. Superintendent checked legal counsel. They said it does. So I think we need to accept it.
I too appreciate all the discussion that we've had. I think it's been a really important topic, and I feel as though from the community to the administration to families, I'm sure the school board, that there's just a lot of engagement around it, and I think that's really important. One of the things that I want to see as an outcome is this idea of student engagement and belonging and improved social interactions and mental health, and certainly maybe, hopefully academic gains as well. But the engagement piece is the piece that I'm really curious about. And I really do believe that that is a big part of the purpose of this law and policy. So I'm curious, I know it's not our purview to be talking about how are we going to assess this, but as a board member, I would find it really helpful to have some data on what are we looking at around what is the impact? What is this really doing for our students? And especially around that sense of belonging and engagement. And so, yeah, that's because this is a huge topic, and it carries a lot of weight. And I am experiencing, the weight of that. And yet I also feel that, we need to move forward. But having data that really targets engagement and belonging and social interactions and mental health, all of that would be extremely helpful. The more we can bring that forward, implement it and bring it forward.
Add something. I just want to say how much I appreciate everything that everyone has contributed to this conversation. I think that this has been the first time while serving on the board that I've had such a incredibly difficult time really measuring my own instincts and thoughts as a parent against what is best for the students in our district. And I myself have experienced an incredible growth curve. I want to say that so much of everything that you have all shared is something like there's a nugget of truth in everything that we have said. I feel so grateful, and I hope the community can see how deeply we've all thought about this decision. That being said, I absolutely am voting for this policy. I had concerns about the legality of the policy, and that was clarified for me. I had concerns about the workload for teachers and how that would be executed, and those concerns have been clarified for me. I had concerns about where our in policy governance role ended and the administration's role began, and that has been clarified for me. And I had concerns as a parent, and having a student who has a cell phone at the high school. I have also seen so much growth from them, and part of that is because of the culture that already exists for them at the high school. They have shown a level of maturity in their usage that was unexpected to me. And initially, I was very black and white on this topic because it was just so hard and exhausting as a parent to live in the gray. But their experience and that of other parents who I know that have high school students has taught me that we cannot place that entire responsibility on the school, but what our focus should remain to be is the distraction-free environment and how we can support that for our community as well as our district. So you all had so many words that were words that I was ready to say as soon as the conversation opened. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to not be the only board member who didn't speak.
Ethan.
Sorry, Kevin. I actually don't think our policy meets the draft policy. I think you can just, so it's shall maintain a cell phone free school environment to promote focused mental health and increase social cohesion among our students. Goal of this policy to work free from distractions that impact learning by prohibiting student use and access to cell phones. I've heard from my daughter, I'm going to use her as the only example, that even if it's in a locker or in a bag, she will be distracted. So to me, having any access during the day will allow for distractions. And I think if you polled every kid, there would be a point, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe more, where they're going to be thinking about what's going on their phone and should I go check it. And so I think that I appreciate what you're saying and that the policy has been brought to us. If it fits, I just don't think it meets that high level standard.
Yeah, just to clarify, I wasn't referring to the model policy. I was referring to the law.
Okay. The law was not referenced. Was it referenced in any of our?
It's cited, but it's not the link on the actual agenda.
What are the specifics of the law
I'll get it, just a sec.
Vermont
that don't?
16 at 523.
16.5.
I had to look it up too, Ethan. I did that earlier today, just
Yeah.
like I understood
The law aspect.
what the law said, what state's model policy said, and then what our policy says.
And so if our policy is modeled off of the state policy,
Mhm.
which is maybe different than what the law is saying,
583.
that's another.
I mean, I just think what we're being asked to do here is to make sure that the policy we're adopting
It's the law.
fits the law.
Yeah.
And just in general, right? That's the firearms policy, tobacco policy, harassment policy,
Yeah.
right? Those are all set by law, not by board policy. And so there's administrative policies that come to us. You have to make sure that those are,
Sure.
meet the needs.
More than I would say 9.9 times out of 10, we would adopt a draft policy coming from AOE or the state. And so
Or VSBA.
or VSBA. So my assumption would be that the draft policy that we're basing our policy off would be based off of the law. And my interpretation of the draft state policy is that distraction-free environment.
Yeah, there's been also comments raised about does it apply to students and teachers and everything. I think
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
outside the scope of what we're being asked to review though.
And the law says we have to review this at least annually.
Doesn't, it says that the
That's the model.
AOE has to review it annually.
Oh, I'm interpreting that slightly differently.
Yeah,
But I think, right, this also goes to our interpretation could be different than CVU's interpretation, could be different than Addison Central's interpretation.
I mean, I'm just coming from the perspective of Kevin had addressed, I think, a really important piece of saying, if the policy that is presented reflects law, then, right, it's our responsibility to adopt it, right? Like that makes sense to me. I'm feeling that even more so now, a disconnect, because we adopted the model policy from the AOE. It is like pretty much word for word with just the separation about grade stuff. So if the draft policy that we built our policy off of isn't following the law.
Here, Ethan, there's a lot to read in the statute, but the main piece is the reoccurring language around prohibiting student use of cell phones and non-school issued personal electronic devices that connect to cellular devices, the internet, or have wireless capabilities at school from arrival to dismissal. So that's like the key meat. It's really about prohibiting student use. And then the model policy, I mean, there's a lot more in here, especially around the exceptions and healthcare plans and 504s and all those pieces, but
So sorry to be monopolizing this conversation here, but to me, then, if that's the case, then our policy isn't necessarily following, because we're saying, right, to maintain a school environment free from student use. And then we're adding in here to work free from distractions by prohibiting student use and access. We're not prohibiting student use and access.
so I would just say that this is the conversation that I was referencing earlier with the attorney, where he is like, when you get down into the weeds like this, stop thinking about cell phones and substitute something like alcohol, right? Vaping. Like we're not collecting or storing devices or other things that we prohibit traditionally. We're saying that we prohibit them, and then we're responding when then there's some kind of disciplinary infraction related to that. So this case is unique because we're prohibiting the use of it, but yet so many kids are walking through the door with it and we know about it, which is why the storage location, I think, has been such a hang up.
Okay.
It does say that if we don't adopt a policy, it falls back to the most current model policy. So in effect, that is the draft policy, or the state model policy is our default policy.
Except that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm called in, so I can't see anything, so it's hard for me to really participate as I'd like to, but I respect what everyone's saying. I think we're
Steve,
going
is that
in
you?
circles with this. Yeah, Steve. Oh.
Thanks. You weren't there at roll call, so I just didn't see you up there. Hey, Steve. What's new?
Hi. But yeah, sorry, I called in because we lack electronic devices right now at our house. But just got back from vacation. Anyways, but
not distracted.
Anyway, I think we're going around in circles with this a little bit. I am in favor of the policy currently as written. I do think it meets the intent of the rules and the model policy. I think nothing's going to be perfect. I think the fact that nobody on either side loves it means it's probably a good place to start, and then tweak it as the data comes in. And then let's see how it goes. I mean, I think what Tara said originally about parents having to kind of police their own children with when they have access to these, if they don't want them at schools. I mean, there's no substitute for that, and there never will be, and that goes for anything. The school can only do so much. I think given the resources we have and all the effort that's been done by the administration, I do think this is a good start personally. Thank you.
I'm going to call the vote. How many do we have here? We have 9, 10, 11. I would make 12. I'm not going to vote because if there's a tie, Right, 12 would put me at a tie.
Assuming everybody votes.
Assuming everybody votes. Oh my God, Kevin. Totally thwarted my plan.
Not vote regardless.
I should not vote regardless. Okay. All in favor? Kevin told me no.
So wait till the votes tally and then you can decide.
Thank you. I'm learning, Susan. I'm learning.
I'm genuinely curious as to why you would tell her not to.
We have an even number.
Yeah.
Just to be
General.
a tiebreaker?
It's like being the Speaker of the House or something. All
Okay.
right, so all in favor?
I,
Counting. Keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4,
And
5, 6,
7.
7, 7,
8.
8.
you counted me or not, but I'm for it.
Okay.
You want to do that again?
Yeah, can we do?
I do.
Sorry, because
My vision just isn't what it used to be.
Appreciate that.
I had LASIK.
Confident hands.
Hold them up high. Just and then Allison's got her hand up. Steve said yes.
2 hands is cheating.
okay. 9 plus 2, so 11 with the student votes.
Yes. Okay. All opposed. Oh, there are only 2. Any abstentions? Policy passes. Couple of months with this, and I just want to tell everybody that I am so appreciative of the discussion, the civil discourse, the ability to agree and disagree and engage in this conversation. I'm thankful that I get to be a part of this board, so thank you.
Even though you didn't vote.
Yeah. Kevin is pretty Thanks, Kevin.
Waiting for the vote.
What's up with me?
History.
Really, so I can go home and my kid and be like, I didn't vote.
See,
Oh,
there you have it. All day.
Okay.
I know how you feel about it.
I've actually been very clear in saying this is something the state is requiring of us, so that they know where to channel their anger. Great.
Next item.
Next item, policy governance.
We passed policy governance, like,
Oh,
it's now.
you don't want to do the module tonight?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
case in point, we did a good job.
Good. We did.
Yes, and we definitely need to keep thinking about what does it mean to be a policy governance board? I mean, no, I'm neutral on whether we do this tonight or not, but I think this whole experience was a good illustration to me that it's complicated to think about what our role is and isn't. It's a policy governance board. Or I still find it confusing sometimes. I'm just speaking for myself. I don't think Kevin does, but
He's locked in.
I appreciate that, Claire.
It'll be so much fun next year when we talk about a technology-free school.
The state's gonna tell us to ban.
So new. Great. I can't wait till they get to college.
Gonna be handwriting, 3-page essays again.
Can't they use the typewriter?
Oh, yeah.
Or talk to text.
Policy governance.
Policy governance.
Or do you want to push this till next time? I mean, no, you want to do it now?
Let's knock it out.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
do it and we don't have to.
We don't have to belabor it.
Right, Peter.
You guys rock. Making my night so easy.
Pushing it off. We'll never.
We only had 3 community comments. We have no excuse.
Yeah.
There's
There's no Knicks game on tonight, so we're fine.
The Brewers are out.
Information.
Do you even need more information?
But I wanted.
What is
So I
the
get it.
difference?
Yes.
And Edie and I were just history, but like this does happen from time to
It
time.
has happened on this.
We've had multiple occurrences where one of us is extremely passionate about a particular topic and goes kind of on their own, and parks themselves at the central office and just says, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And we've had to navigate it.
So can I ask a question like around that experience, and obviously just keeping it broad, but like this idea of like unreasonable staff time, right? And this question of like, how do you determine what is unreasonable? And I think there are two pieces, like what is the questions that I can ask? What's the information that I can ask for? And then how many times can I ask it or re-ask it or ask it in a different way?
Did you get your bus data yet?
I did actually. Been out there counting by myself as the bus goes by. But I think like that's a really good point, because I think that there are, in that particular example, I think that there is information that I need to be able to be making an informed decision, especially in light of being asked to buy 3 new buses unbudgeted. And so to me, that falls within that financial purview. But for you, it sounds like maybe not so much. And so how do we use that as an example of, I mean, John did drink my coffee today. I hope that wasn't unreasonable for me to offer that to him.
It's good coffee.
It's decent coffee, right? And there certainly are times when, a board member should be having a conversation to gain information from the superintendent, but like, help me wrap my head around like how some of those differences play out in your mind.
Please, the floor is yours.
So, I mean, I think there's that line there, which is, always up for interpretation, but I think one of our fundamental rules of the road is an individual board member has no power.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can ask, but you can't direct.
Right.
Committee can ask. Committee has power. Board has power. Individual doesn't. So if it's important for you to have the data, you need to convince a majority of us to have the data, and then we'll get the data. But an individual, at some point, they're a minority.
Yeah.
They should not be tying up time and resources of the administration because they think it's important.
So there is that difference between asking and directing.
Right. And the administration needs to be confident enough and, be able to say, no. And
we're not getting you that
unless this is the direction of the board. This is over the top. I can't do this. I understand what you're asking. I wish I could get it to you easily, but I need to make sure the board's aware of how much effort this is going to take, or what risk we're going to realize in order to.
Or completely inappropriate for you to be requesting.
Yeah.
Or too meansy. Yeah. I think that the bus data isn't necessarily a good example of this, and he was just pushing buttons the way it's been.
Yeah.
But I think there's another issue here that isn't covered, and that is the superintendent or the CEO has to make decisions all the time about how to maintain good relations with the board. And sometimes it's easier to keep good relations than to keep policy governance strictly. And sometimes it's a better choice to keep good relations than it is to keep policy governance strictly. And so I think that it's on us to help each other and remind each other to say, let's not push that superintendent to do something that is for our personal interests, right? Like I have, I asked about vaping, but I didn't say I want data, right? Like, we're in a meeting and it's an opportunity to have a conversation, and I'm not going to follow up yet. No, really, I'm not. But, it's that kind of thing where it's just, so I think that is an interesting balance too, right? Because it's.
But then I right, the layer below it, what if the principal, right? What if you did ask Kevin for vaping information, right? Like that's even a whole other layer. Like when you're approaching a principal or like your kid's teacher or something, like there's just that really fine line where, okay, you're a parent, you're a volunteer, you're a board member. And I think that across the district, folks don't see us as anything but board members. And that's hard to like switch your brain sometimes. Like, oh, I can't just go to Kevin and ask for vaping information. So that's not the will of the board.
I have a question. How does it work though? Just in reflecting on some of the things that you all have just said, when someone is giving a report, and quite often one of us asks for more detailed information. And sometimes the answer is, I can get you that information. The rest of us don't know if that individual board member gets that information. And does that only happen if it's triggered that 3 or 4 of us or a majority of us say like, yes, we'd like to see more of that information? Often that information comes in the next time that there's a report. We don't really have like a strict procedure of how that happens for us to find.
We don't vote.
Right.
Is it the majority of board or is it just the will of a percentage of the board?
Kind of tangential to that. Like we had the conversation at Brown when we were Brewster Pierce about what we want the principal's report to look like. I think we all have the impulse to ask for, at least I do, the impulse to ask for a lot more. But we all have those impulses. So maybe we should have a setup, a place where we actually have the will of the board to get some of these, what might be ad hoc or smaller requests actually have a formal process to get more information, have this discussion in an open meeting and John can say yes or no. And we can have a more formal process every X amount of time to say like, here's data that we would like to see. And then it can be not just a board member, but the will of the board and again, I don't know what that form of request looks like or that form of how it's sent out or just it's a superintendent's report and that we're already there. But I think having a structure where we avoid this by preempting it and funneling it into a official process is valuable.
I think that you've seen it in committees and you've seen it in this room where the chair of the committee or the board chair will ask, is that the will of the board? And nodding is enough. And enough nods. I mean, that's part of the job is to figure out what the will is and if it's a person who's acting on their own. And so, my opinion is that we don't need a more formal process, but maybe but that's just one board member, right? So it's true, right? Like this is
about what that looks like. Yeah, that's what
or more intentionality about thinking about what more things we want. And it's not necessarily like a formal voting process.
I think to that Edie's point though, after a committee meeting or after a board meeting, I'm usually connecting with Tara or whoever the chair is and kind of debriefing how it went and what we need to make sure we carry forward to the next agenda. Was there something that we said we wanted data on? So I think it maybe isn't as formal as you were just referencing. But I also think there's an element missing a little bit, right? Like we could miss something conceivably, like we're not checking with people afterwards to make sure we captured all the questions, right? And so that kind of leaves it to individual board members to say like, hey, what about X?
Or your interpretation of what you heard.
That too.
Just for the formal process, I was thinking maybe it wasn't explicit. It's just like, hey, what information would we like that we're not getting standard? Maybe that's just a part of it.
Those were a lot of my kind of questions as I was going through it. And then when the the links came up in the agenda today, and I know we're not there yet and we're gonna get there. But the multi-year work plan, the one pager, I love it. I love it so much. And it talks about getting all of this actual like data, and it's going to be reported 3 times a year. So that feels to me like a very clear plan and a path forward to know like the data, this specific data will be reported 3 times a year. And that helps me to like know when to expect to see some of that stuff. Because when you're coming in kind of new, it's like, how do I find this? And I have spent so many hours on our website, and it's still looking so much better. And it's so much easier to use now. So huge kudos to whoever is making that
Definitely.
magic happen. But this plan, I think, really helps me to understand how to get more information, when to expect it, and what information I can see.
Print that out and put it on your fridge.
I might.
Ooh. Like the one year the VSBA did that.
I would even use the
Ritual.
I feel like I'm speaking a lot on this one, but I think there's one of these questions that's really important to highlight. And it's how do we create a culture where the superintendent declining an individual request is understood as the government's model working rather than as a conflict? I feel like, I don't know that there's an answer, but I feel like that's something that we all need to just kind of think about, unless maybe Kevin has an answer because he's looking around like he might have an answer.
No, I think that's a good test. Like, I think that really puts the superintendent, in a tough position, but a position that where they have to be able to draw that line and and be consistent with it. And as I think we can also, if it's done during the meeting, I think we can hold ourselves accountable. Ethan, do we really need that data? Right?
Yes.
It's kind of like a way to try to get consensus driven, to validate the need and not have, superintendent just assume, but like, let's talk about that. Like, how much effort is that going to take? Is that where we want to spend our time? Like, what is that going to lead to?
Yeah.
But when it's done outside of the meeting, that's where you kind of have to have that.
Well, is that also part of like leadership, right? I mean, like if I continued to berate John about getting me the data that I want, and he was having a hard time kind of drawing that line with me and being like, whoa, either too much or he's just too charismatic and I can't say no to him. He would have to lean
Maybe
in.
too much coffee.
This coffee's amazing. He would have to lean into Tara and other folks to say, hey, can you lean in and talk as a board member to board member with Ethan and get him off my back, right? I mean, I think that's something that we would all
And then you might decide,
want to get to.
it's like Freedom of Information Act.
Could
Push.
probably won't.
Push.
It would actually have to be there for me to be able to get it though.
With the state.
I mean, I think the point about, also just maintaining good relationships is really valid. I mean, I would trust John or anyone else who I might ask a question of to tell me if, if I'm calling you every single day with, versus like every once in a while, something comes up that I want to touch base about for 5 or 10 minutes, I would hope and expect that you would say, all right, Susan, this is not, I can't do this week, or I don't want to talk to you about this at all, or yes, we can talk about it, And I think that's like, we need to be able to have relationships with you as individuals, but not, not in a way that's burdensome. Yes, in a way that hopefully makes us all feel like we're working together. And I think that can be a fine line. And so I guess, we would rely on you and but primarily you to tell us.
Get your red card.
Yeah, exactly.
Cart back.
I mean, my wife does tell me the best and worst thing about me is that super direct. So I don't like I won't have an issue, I think,
That's great.
surfacing that, but I think I think maybe Kevin made the point about, or maybe it was Edie, the point about the relationship piece, right? And I think that is super important to me. And like I feel like I have a different kind of cadence for hearing from or checking in with different members of the board, just kind of in general, but also about, you know, what they're interested in, their questions that they have. And I can say for me, I feel like that's been working pretty well as I get to know all of you. And hasn't, you know, we haven't reached that point where we're aspiring to me saying that, you know, having to make it an issue and us celebrate that as compliance.
Well, I think it's also a new experience for us. We have a new superintendent, right? We're establishing parameters. It's not necessarily a new board, but it's not like everybody's been on the board for 20 years. And we talk about culture in the high school, right? There's culture on the board. And so some of this is just like pushing limits, testing boundaries, figuring out the new dynamic. And I haven't felt like you haven't been able to say, oh, I can't answer this now. And you'll be like, oh, let's take it offline. And whether, again, I think if someone were to continue to push it, we would, as a board, need to know that and then be able to lean in to support you. But we're still figuring it out. I mean, not quite a year, really, full time, right?
A very exciting year, though.
Very busy.
It's like 2 weeks or 10 years, depending on moment.
The month. Move on to school improvement planning.
Sounds good. Helen set us up really well.
I know.
Right.
Really?
So I'll share. So there is, so that I made these and I added the acronym list shortly before the meeting, just because as I went through it again, I said, like, I love acronyms, but holy moly, are there a lot of acronyms on this document? And so I will just emphasize, this is in very draft form right now. And so we've been working as a district leadership team. So that's the principals, assistant principals, and central office administrators. We're at the stage now where we're going to be shifting gears and getting input from different groups that are really key in the actioning of these different pieces. And in a future meeting, so coming soon to a future board meeting near you, will be a much bigger document that actually walks through much more detail what we're talking about. So what you're seeing here are some kind of key pieces of the plan, but it's actually much more detailed. And for me, there are just a couple of things I want to highlight. The first is those 4 categories. That to me is where our ends meet the categories that the AOE uses for monitoring and looking at schools. And so it's kind of the coming together of, you know, all our local world and our regulated world. And those pillars have been, or those 4 categories, the 3 pillars and the foundation, have been helpful for us in organizing that work. The year 1, year 2 piece, this is not just a 2-year plan, but we're really focused on the first 2 years. I remember during the interview process, we talked a lot about frameworks at one different point. And there's a really, really great part of the high reliability schools framework that goes into the research around preconditions. And they've done a lot of work over decades identifying why school improvement efforts fail. And it is most often because we don't have preconditions in place. We jump to the exciting part of the work and we're skipping over really key things that need to happen first. And so really year 1 is really focused on what are those kind of nitty gritty, maybe not exciting pieces that we need to get in place so that we can, I mean, some of them are exciting, but you know, what are those things that need to be in place so that the year 2 and beyond work can happen? There is also a real desire from the leadership team to be like very specific and very concrete about what is the outcome, who's responsible for making sure that it happens, when does that happen? And I think actually part of that comes from the previous district priorities, which everybody really agreed with and really liked, but felt very big. Right. And so I think there's a real desire from the team to be very specific about what exactly we're going to do to move us forward towards our goals. Helen referenced the reporting and really the hope for us to get to a place where we have a dashboard that we can be updating with this information. We as a leadership team have really decided that this is information that the community really deserves to have and to have that be as current as possible for us. And so I think one of the things we'll have to talk about is how can we kickstart that community communication process with a board meeting so that everyone here is really in the know about what we're pushing out. And then I'll just say on that bottom right-hand corner, the piece about ed reform, like there's so much we don't know about what we're going to have to do in the coming years that I just feel like any of these documents need to have a disclaimer that any and all of it could change to respond to what's happening. And the backside of the paper is a kind of cheat sheet for our current continuous improvement plan process. And the alignment here is actually really strong with what we're talking about moving forward. And so you can see the two areas that each school is working on or has identified. And if I were to speak in very broad terms, we're talking about belonging and social emotional learning, and we're talking about math and literacy performance across the district, kind of in those buckets.
You want to roll into the superintendent update?
Sure.
I mean, unless everybody's digesting it.
Question. Outside of the leadership at this board, do you get any external feedback on this?
So not on this format yet. This is the beginning of that process. And so we have meetings with different groups coming up where we're going to be workshopping this. Although I will say a lot of what is in here has come from what people have asked for as far back as the community questionnaire and the listening sessions. So if you look at those kind of key themes from, I should have actually linked that report in here, but if you look at that report I shared with the board, a lot of the key themes are addressed here, as well as some pieces, like you may remember, we found ourselves in partial compliance related to treatment of students. So some of those pieces around MTSS and the guaranteed and viable curriculum are key pieces here because of that. So there's been feedback that led to this, but this is the beginning of kind of sharing what we've developed and getting feedback on it.
Yeah, I think keeping that linkage would be helpful.
I'm not sure if it's right now or if it's going to be covered further in the superintendent's report, but the NEP and CLEE, the equity, can you tell us about what that's going to look like and what the hopes are for the outcome of that?
Yes. Hold on. I'm just making one note. I'm sorry, Helen.
If that's the will of the board, by the way.
No, it is a suggestion worth. So here's and this is a little dicey to talk about because part of this pivot and the way we're talking about equity in the district involves our reconfiguration of staff. And so I want to be sensitive to that. But this is a little bit of a pivot to really being exceptionally explicit that every leader, whether they're an instructional leader or an administrator, is a leader of equity in the district. And one of the things as we started having that conversation that came up very quickly was that we don't have a common frame of reference or framework for engaging in that work together or having those conversations together. And that's not to say people don't have equity training. It's just that we don't all have the same equity training or the same way of talking about things. And when we started really looking at that across those teams, we had gaps, right?
It's not equitable.
We're inequitable in our approach to equity leadership. And so it felt very important with the change in staffing related to equity in the district to make sure that we were all getting on the same page and had consistent support with that. So these are two groups that have submitted proposals to us. And right now we're just working through the finer details of what that work will look like. I'm actually super excited. I'm like acronymed out. So I'm gonna reference it, but the CLEE group that's actually a 2-year commitment from the leadership team. So we'll be working with them in several cohorts through the summer and fall next year, and then again in the spring, summer, and fall in the following year. So that's a super interesting kind of commitment that the team has made about doing that work. I'm excited for that. Yeah. So there's a lot in the superintendent report this month. The first piece is there's a kind of front loading, or the front page is loaded with information about the licensed staff restructuring, which is now totally complete. And so there's plenty of information here that I'm happy to go into, but that process actually takes much longer than it feels like it should because of the displacement rights that professional staff have. So if someone is RIF'd, receives a reduction in force, and loses their position, that sets several rounds sometimes of motion, or several rounds of movement and motion, where that person then has a right to displace another staff member with less seniority than them. But then that staff member who is then newly displaced may have displacement rights over a different staff member, sometimes even in multiple licensure areas. And so that whole process takes weeks to work itself out. And our goal was to finish that process so that everybody went into vacation with the knowledge of where they were going to be next year. And we were able to do that. And we were also able to offer positions to all but 2 people that were involved in the RIFs and the displacement. And our hope is still to find positions for those 2 people for next year. So we're working on that right now. As part of this, we really focused on protecting positions that were closest to direct student service delivery, and as in many cases, actually increasing the amount of student services that we were able to offer, and cutting from those district and or trying to cut as much as possible from those district or central office services and push them out to the building. So that's kind of the framework that is articulated here.
Is it normal to have almost 50 contracts not returned at this time?
Yeah, we are actually, thank you for saying that. So we are 230 out of 279 for contracts. So was that like 83% almost? That's very high for the time period that we're in, the number of days since we've issued them. So we're actually in great shape related to that. And then, my understanding is historically we've never actually gotten to 90 by the deadline. We're always chasing some people to turn their contracts in. So that is super encouraging. We do not have major numbers that are impacted in support staff or central office, but those changes will be happening over the next couple of weeks as well. Curriculum instruction and assessment, where I'm so excited for July 1. We have Scott Thompson coming on. He's been doing some pre-work with key groups to get ready for that, which is great. He's also been involved, and he will be, so we have our first CSI meeting with the Agency of Education, our first in-person meeting with them at Brewster Pierce on Thursday. Scott and I will both be there for that. And we're excited about that work. You can see the designation for Jericho Elementary School has been removed from the list, which is wonderful, but doesn't diminish our improvement efforts in any of our schools, really, right? We want to get better across the board. I think it is also just, this isn't on here, but the secretary released some information to superintendents right before the break that detailed really how off the assessment and designation system is. And so even in places where they've stood by the designation, they know that they're not correct. right? So they know now that for multiple years, they're actually designating and penalizing schools that are closing the achievement gap and letting schools that are with widening achievement gaps and performance go. And so it's really a mess for us as a state right now. But what's not a mess is pre-K. We're super excited. Enrollment continues to come in. So we are expecting to be totally full with the wait list by the time the school year starts, which is great. About 30% of our CCFAP applications have been approved yet. So we've been working through those with families and with the state. Sometimes the state is looking for a lot of documentation for families, and we've been trying really hard to make that an easy process, as easy as possible for families. So we're on track to be fully enrolled with CCFAP by July 1, which was our deadline, which will be great. And then the legislative update, I joked with Edie when we were walking in that as soon as I finished typing this, it was all out of date, which is going to be the case with any of these pieces right now. I think the big news is with the way the House passed the measure, we were holding our own as a district and remained intact, but all that is going to have to go through the Senate now and then honestly be negotiated between the two houses. I don't know if you want to.
I do, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
I just want to say, we don't know what the Senate is going to do with this education transformation plan, but if they concur with the House, I think it's really important for us to pay attention to two things as a board. One of them is that we are currently in our own standalone study group to see if, so that I think that's important to understand what that is and important to understand what our board role is in that. And I don't know that we quite know that yet. But I think the other thing that's really important is that we were assigned to a CISA, to the Cooperative Education Service area that's in Addison County and not one that's in Chittenden County. And we can petition to be in a different one. And I think that's a board decision that we want to think about really carefully and understand what that means for us. I think that, John, it's going to take a lot of work from you actually to do
Or
that.
are you asking or directing?
No, I'm stating where we are because we still don't even know what the law is going to be. But I think that there is a board role here. This is going to pass probably around just before, maybe, hopefully, just before our last board meeting for the school year. And so just putting it out there that we may need to meet as a board before August, depending on the language. And it's going to take time for all of the different areas to be set up, but we want to be prepared as a board for what we want to do. And so we haven't talked about this at all just because there's so much up in the air. And if the Senate comes up with something totally different, then there's no reason to move down this path. But that's just one of those things that I want to flag for us.
Isn't CVU also, or CBSD also in a CISA?
They are in our CISA in Addison County and in their own little bubble. Us and Essex and CVSD are the three districts in the state that have already merged in our own bubbles.
I'm just Essex West. So it's not like totally Addison County, our CISA, right? It's like sort of Addison County.
It is mainly Addison County. We probably have more Chittenden County students with the two districts.
Yeah. More, I would guess.
So that's an interesting,
Okay.
So, but yeah, so that's it. It's just an interesting thing to think about, and it might be the right place to be, but it's definitely a conversation piece to have.
Okay.
I just sort of continue off that and sort of the irony as a Huntington resident whose state senator is actually in Addison County. And I think we had this conversation years ago, maybe kind of around the merger, when we were talking about how great it would be if our unified district aligned with our legislative representation. And so to me, it's like, I mean, I think a lot of people in Huntington be like, oh, wait, does this mean I get to send my kid? I live on Texas Hill and now I get to go to CVU. You might get a lot of support there.
That's not what
They have
CISAs
they
do.
have school choice.
To be clear, not
Right.
what CISAs
And so,
do.
but and maybe also part of the education that has to happen, because if someone sees that, they may not have been paying attention to what CISA is, and they just assume it's now the new district. But I appreciate it. I would love to keep talking and whatever. I think this is maybe where board members have that advocacy piece around being like, does this work for us as a district?
Can someone explain what a CISA is?
Yes. So it's a collaborative education service area. So you probably heard it referred to more as BOCES.
Okay, yeah.
So it's that model, or in Massachusetts, they're referred to as collaboratives often, right? So you have these groups of districts that pool together and share resources to accomplish things that they can do more efficiently as a bigger group. So purchasing curriculum materials at scale, sometimes it's transportation, special education services for intensive needs, things.
A lot like what the advisory group put together over the summer.
But
A little bit.
Yeah.
How do I get more information? So I just want to know, like, what's my homework? Where can I go to figure out what I need to know to make an informed decision? Because when I try to do that on my own, I feel like I end up down a lot of different rabbit holes. So where should I focus?
I don't know that there's a good answer right now because there's no clear law yet. So I guess, and the other, maybe we don't have to meet over the summer because it's going to take time to hire different people at the CISAs, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it just should be on our radar as a.
So I'll just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't read the report from the task force, it's worth reading.
Yeah.
Watch hours of.
No, don't watch.
legislative-
There was a good
Really?
podcast I came across at some point where I felt like things were really explained.
Oh, great.
So these are the two that are on the plate for the Senate to decide to pass or not pass as part of the bill.
The Senate, so H 955 includes both of those pieces. It's, I think it's a 70-page bill. I don't think it's as long as the previous one. Something like that.
But they're gonna read and decide to.
They're gonna decide what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when we have more final information, I'm happy to work with Edie and Tara to make sure that the group, our other reps or senators, as they may or may not want, to get you that information so that you have it. I will say the one thing that I continue to be the most alarmed by is S220, which is actually not. S220 is good. So as soon as I finished typing this, I was in a VSA meeting and I learned that the S220 was out of date. So S220 went away, but actually the language from S220 has been merged into a bigger bill. Do you even know the number, Edie, off the top of your head? I'm not.
It's the miscellaneous tax bill, I think.
Oh, so
Is it?
54? Or no, the yield bill. It's in the
Yield bill. Yield.
So, so this language continues to be in there, and this would be really devastating for us. So I'm working with Chelsea Myers and several other superintendents. The first invitation for testimony has gone out, and the VSA is organizing how they're going to provide that testimony. There may be the opportunity for board members to engage in some advocacy. I'm happy to explain more here because I honestly don't remember how much I explained in a previous meeting. I don't know if people want that. Okay. I got several no shakes, so someone stop me if that's wrong. The last piece is the pre-K weighting. So that I was really hopeful for half a second that pre-K kids would be weighted the same as any other kid, but that ball's been kicked down the road. There's going to be another study on it. So hopefully we'll have more and better information or better news on that in the future. Mr. C.
I just want to say if anybody wants to advocate on the excess spending threshold, you should reach out to your senators.
Do we have any specific language that we can?
John has really great testimony that he can share.
Is it the same thing that was sent out a while ago, or is there new something?
I can send an update out for people so they have it. The information is still the same, but
I would love that.
yeah.
And the bill is H 949 now.
Thank you, Matt Fortnite. The shorthand is that we as a district has done what the state has asked us to. We've expanded public pre-K and we've been paying for capital improvement in cash and retiring debt. And now this bill is going to penalize with higher taxes districts that have done that versus districts that have taken on debt and have gutted their public pre-K programs. I think that's it.
Very much.
I make a motion to approve the April 11th minutes. 13th, sorry.
Thank you. This was a lie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries. Thanks, Ethan.
Discussion.
No, not tonight. I talked out. Other business? Does anybody want to reflect?
No.
No. Well, Eli had his hand up first.
I have a little other business. So I, over the past year or so, have been working with a group of students from other districts. They're also student reps, and we've been sort of building up an organization called Vermont Learners Association. And I personally am considering it a launch event. We've been doing little things throughout the year, but on May 9th, and I sent an email to you that I could not figure out how to email the whole school board. I tried all the different combinations in my email, so I just sent an email to Tara to share. But we're having a little like introductory conference from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. on May 9th. I will probably be there for at least the first part. That is our prom date. But I've definitely been very involved in the creation of the entire organization and the event. And it's just a very exciting opportunity to like sort of introduce ourselves and get ourselves going. If anyone has any questions, I can answer.
Where is it going to be?
It's going to be at CVU.
The whole state, Chittenden County, both.
Yes, we're definitely trying in the future to incorporate more people because it is very Northern Vermont heavy right now. Yeah, Northern Vermont heavy. But that's definitely an area we're working on. Love to see you all there.
I understand you might have a little college news to
Yes.
share with us.
I don't remember when this was, but a couple weeks ago I committed to Tufts University. Very excited. It was my top choice, and I'm feeling good about this.
Yay.
Hey.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm gonna miss you all, but I'm gonna be enjoying Boston.
You still dial in from Boston. 1 point away.
Eli, you are so articulate and bright, and you are such an amazing contributor to this board. And anytime we hear anything doom and gloom about what's going on with young people or high schoolers or our district, I just think, you are 110% proof that our kids are great. And congratulations. It's just such a
Thank you
delight
so much.
to know you.
I feel so special right now.
Yeah, I was just curious, Golden Apples, I think this year, is that coming up?
Yeah.
18th.
Okay, thank you.
So we have 2 consecutive meetings and
Oh, it says right there on that. There. So who's being involved from the board?
Allison and I are it's all taken care of.
Mission continues.
Yeah.
And that meeting starts at 6, Golden Apple.
Yes. Yes. Little wine and cheese situation at 6 and then the
Wine and cheese.
No wine and cheese.
No, wine. I'm sorry, a little cheese.
We're gonna try to squeeze in a meeting after, so there's no wine.
No wine.
I believe in our policies.
Yes. Which I'm well
No
aware.
devices.
Or wine.
And cheese.
We won't be checking Friday.
Have any of the committees met since last time we met? No.
No,
I
it's the
don't think
break
so.
had our
Yeah.
schedules all messed up. Yeah.
Oh, wasn't there one on the 18th?
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yes,
We did.
yeah, like right before the break. Have Lisa time. Yeah.
I can,
Yeah, I don't want
Yeah, do some warrants and talk about future budgets.
so the, yep, anyone can jump in and, tell me, we talked about the end of the year outlook and the updated projections for next year. So I'll start with next year because that's the good news. Kevin knows what I'm doing here. The sheets were oriented incorrectly.
Anybody call that out during the meeting?
You did.
I did this the whole time.
So, we're still working through the financial impact of the RIFs, right? So just because of all that displacement and the inability for us sometimes to predict, sometimes people have a license we don't know about, right? So this is close, but not going to be totally accurate for now. But we were able to model in the increased pre-K expenses to expand the system, and then also model in the kind of guaranteed minimum that we'll be getting for additional payments. And so the good news is for next year, we're 14,000 to the positive after the projected savings from the RIFs. So that's actually a good outcome for us, given all the change in the budget from when it was set. That still doesn't include any operating margin for us, so it's still going to be another tight year. But at least we're starting the year from zero, or from 14,000, which is good. And then the FY26 outlook. So you may remember we started the year with a projection of somewhere between 1.8 and a $2 million budget hole. Although I think we finally broke down in the meeting and we're using the D word, so the deficit. And we were able to cover a lot of that with operational savings over the course of the year, which has been really fantastic. But we did make a partial transfer from the reserve fund, the capital reserve fund, earlier in the year. But we are still projected to be $463,000 to the negative. So that's money that will have to come out of a combination of the capital reserve fund and the positive fund balance that we're carrying between now and the end of the year. So. And we'll have to actually plan to transfer a little more than that, because we really don't, or Nicole and my recommendation is to plan to transfer slightly more than we need, so we don't run the risk of actually ending the year negative if we have an unexpected expense happen after we make the transfer. But that will happen in a future finance committee meeting.
The resolution process has started with VSBA. So if we want to start thinking about drafting a resolution, I think we'll talk about it more on May 11th. I just wanted to, in light of everything Edie was just saying with the different bills, are there things that we want the VSBA to advocate for in the future, which essentially is what we would write a resolution.
Excess spending.
Yes. Right.
It'd probably be too late, but for the next time.
Right. Because the deadline to make a submission is June 15th. VSBA is going to open their awards applications this Friday. So there's the Stafford Bell and then the Board Excellence Award. They'll open Friday. If you haven't submitted your board contact information or website bios and photos to Nora, please do that.
This is actually, if I can add on to this one, this is something we get a shockingly large amount of feedback on. Well, I don't know, the board members have a picture and a bio up. So if you haven't, and Nora's been chasing you and you've been immune to her charms, I've asked her to really ramp it up so that we could get everybody up there. So just be forewarned for those calls.
All right, May 11th, we're at Smiley. May 18th, 6 o'clock start for Golden Apples at Campbell's Hump. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great, thanks everybody.
Thank you.